Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the 17th episode of the Left, Right, and Center Show. It's very exciting stuff. How's everybody doing tonight?
Man,
So great.
17.
Yeah. So
Feels like we just started doing this. Like it
I
doesn't
know.
feel like it's
Isn't
been
that crazy?
17 of them.
17
That's wild.
episodes. We were going to say that when we hit our 100th episode. I was like, isn't that crazy? I feel like we just started in the summer.
Do you remember? It's like yesterday we just talked about 17 episodes.
Yeah. So, hey, I mean, I think we've come a long way.
Yeah, for sure. We have a long way to go. A lot of
Oh,
learning.
for sure. For sure. Speaking of which, speaking of coming a long way, I actually just uploaded our first clip onto YouTube. So for anybody who likes the shorter segment stuff and doesn't want to hang out for the whole 2 hours of hot air with, us truly, maybe that's a desirable alternative for you. So tell your friends. Now you can get left, right, and center stuff in 30-minute segments or, whatever it turns out to be. But I think this new content's going to be pretty good for a lot of people, and let us know if you like it. So tonight we're going to be doing the death penalty. Not too much to say on that. We'll get to that when we get to that. And then afterwards, probably going to have some sorted stuff to talk about. But, first, news and memes as usual.
I can kick off the memes if you'd like.
Ooh. Busting out
Right.
first.
I know. I'm ready for it. All right. My homeboy Marco Rubio tweeted. Can you guys all see it?
Yeah.
He goes, Biden's cabinet picks went to Ivy League schools, have strong resumes, attend all the right conferences, and will be polite and orderly caretakers of America's decline. I support American greatness, and I have no interest in returning to the normal that left us dependent on China. So I just want to read you guys all something now. So this is my favorite. This is my favorite. The hypocrisy of the right.
Oh.
Trump, University of Pennsylvania, Ivy League. Pompeo, Harvard Law. Mnuchin, Yale. Esper, Harvard. Barr, Columbia. Ross, Yale and Harvard. Acosta, Harvard. Azar, Dartmouth and Yale Law. Ben Carson, Yale. Chow, Transportation. Harvard. Navarro, Harvard. Come on,
Yeah.
come on.
All right, hold on. I got you, right? You think... Try this.
Hey, but Trump cheated his way through, so it doesn't count.
So you say.
Like,
Right,
come on.
Biden,
So his
like-
family
like-
says.
Wasn't Biden like second to last in his class or some bullshit like that?
He was always one of the poorest senators. He wasn't the top of his law degree. He just powered through. Like, come on.
Look,
Like,
man.
come on.
Hey, I'm a C student, so honestly, you know what? This kind of relates to my point, actually. So now, okay, so there is partisanship there. That is definitely a hypocritical thing to say, but with a lot of things,
Hypocrisy.
right? So, for example, let's say somebody on the right focuses on like somebody's race, like says, hey, look, Trump's look at like half of Trump's press secretaries have been female. Now we don't care about feminism, right? We don't care about who has what genitals and that kind of stuff. Like, we're purely meritocratic, and so like, why would we care about that? We care about that because the left cares about that, right? So in that tweet, Marco Rubio is making an argument not to Republicans, he's making an argument to the left that cares about Ivy League educations. Right, just the same way that when Republicans talk about look at all the things that Trump has done for black people and all the things that Trump's done for women and how many women Trump has hired, we don't care about all that. Like, we're not affirmative action. We're not the affirmative action side of the aisle. We care about merit. Right. So when we make those arguments, and when he makes these arguments, he's speaking to the liberal who cares about Ivy League schools.
To me, that post to me is not to the liberal. To me, that post is to the Republican. And if it was to the liberal, it's regardless of who it's to, it's still hypocritical in accusing Biden of picking a cabinet, solely off of Ivy League and going back to the way it was before that screwed up this country. When, according to Chris's well-researched list of politicians, there, many of the right politicians are also from Ivy League schools.
And also, it's kind of like, what's wrong with going to a good college, right? Like,
Well,
it's not a bad thing, or pursuing like the whole meritocracy thing. Also, like I will just say, we are all here for affirmative action. We should be doing things like that. But that aside, just focusing on the hypocrisy of this tweet, it's like the dude is just trying to run for president in a couple of years, and he's just doing everything he can to like make noise, but which is just idiotic, because it's like, come on, man. Like, I get it. You went to Miami Law, and now all of a sudden you could be like, I'm not an Ivy Leaguer. It's like, well, that's really good. I'm so glad you went to one of the prestigious law schools in the country. That I think also people are so ignorant in the sense that his followers probably don't realize this, but going to an Ivy League is not like an automatic, all right, you're stellar. Brown is a great school, but it doesn't compare to Harvard or Yale. And Harvard and Yale are on the same platform as Stanford would be, or as MIT would be, or actually Miami Law. It holds its weight up there. So, Ivy Leagues are just based on a historical football league from the 1700s. And it just so happens that these schools that were all part of the Ivy Football League are still around today. And because they're still around today, over the 300 years that they survived, they've amassed a lot of wealth because they've saved it. They stayed at the top of their game in terms of education. They always transformed at the times. Look at Harvard adopting online education way faster than the rest of the country. These are why they stayed ahead, because they adapted, they challenged the best practices of the times and went forward. But other colleges are just as exceptional, just as prestigious, just as privileged, like Miami Law. So I just thought that this was really hypocritical and funny. I wanted to share it out there.
Well, yeah, I definitely think it's hypocritical. Yeah. And like, to the point also, he talks about having strong resumes. I'm going to assume he has a decent resume, right? Like, and to accuse someone of being it's so weird. It's a backhanded kind of comment here, but like being polite and orderly. I mean, yay, right? Like, let's be polite and take a step away from where we've been for the last 4 years. The only thing in here that I'm not really sure about is attends all the right conferences, like that one, whatever. But everything else, I'm like, yeah, as long as those weren't requirements, as long as Biden wasn't like, okay, the only people I can have in my cabinet went to Ivy League schools, have certain things in their resumes, will bow down and be polite, like, I want people to get hired for the merit that they have, and I don't think those are the only things that show merit. But having those things, there's nothing wrong with.
Right. Well, so, I mean, I think you guys understand maybe what he's trying to say, even if you disagree with it. Maybe you don't. But he's accusing them of being elitist, right? And to Chris's point, sure, that's, it's hypocritical given that, Trump and that laundry list of characters that you mentioned with their degrees. Sure. But this tweet is pointing at them being elitist, silver spoon, out of touch, rich people, right? That don't know anything about the plight of the common man, sure. Right? And I'm not saying whether that's true or not. I'm just saying that is what that is.
It's just funny to me because we literally have a president who is a billionaire who went to University of UPenn, which is an Ivy League. And we're saying that Joe Biden, who was Marco Rubio, actually is I think one of the poorest senators right now. So he has some right to say these things, but he's totally off mark, and he knows he's off mark. He's not an idiot. Joe Biden was the poorest senator almost the entire time he was serving. The only time that he actually made money in his life was when he published his book. And look, I get it. People are like, well, senators get decent pay. But let's be real. Like, at the end of the day, $150,000 a year, it's good pay, but you're not wealthy. You're upper middle class. Like, you're definitely living all right. You're not hurting. But, he's not some millionaire spoon-fed dude. Like, he was born to working class parents. Like, he spent most of his life in Delaware in a working class community. He rode
I thought that wasn't true.
No, he didn't. He rides the train in to DC. That's a real thing. He rides the metro in. He's not taking planes, even though he could. So just saying, he's a noble dude. Like, he's not a bad dude when it comes to the money, right? So I just think it's funny that we're calling out, we're saying, oh, Biden's cabinet's elitist and out of touch, but here you have a billionaire president with an Ivy League degree, with an all-wealthy Ivy League cabinet, but they're not out of touch.
Well,
that's
so Trump's definitely out of touch, but I mean, you can see in there polite and orderly. He's talking about political correctness. He's just talking about the liberal socialite elite class that's just slowly, putting its boot down on the neck of, regular hardworking Americans. So that kind of stuff. Like whether you believe it or not, that's what he's saying.
So polite and orderly is a dog whistle.
I guess so, yeah.
I suppose.
I'm just trying to bring it back to like episode 2.
How dare you? How dare you reference earlier us? All right. What do you got, Tim?
What's my first one here? This one. Let's do it this one.
Oh, yes. Yep, expect this. This will be front and center. What do you think, Chris?
It's going to be another hypocritical moment that's just hilarious and just speaks to the downfall of your party.
I will say one thing. So I do agree with this. So for those who don't understand this meme, if you're not, very politically in tune, that the Republicans and the conservatives have purported to be the party of smaller government and limited government and less spending, right? Get the spending under control. But historically, they haven't actually been putting that into practice when they've been in power. For example, Donald Trump has lowered taxes, but he has increased spending. I don't know. Maybe since Reagan, if any president has reduced spending. I don't even know if Reagan did.
Clinton.
Honestly. So
Clinton is the only one in the more recent presidents that actually had didn't have a deficit.
Was Bill Clinton?
Yeah.
Anyway,
obviously.
It's not as simple as just like, all right, let me save money on going every month by eating out less. It's like those federal dollars are tied to either jobs. Someone's job is being cut, so you can't just cut blocks of like $10,000, right?
If I was in charge, I would.
What was that?
Yeah, if I was in charge, yes, I could, and yes, I would.
Even though that money stimulates the economy, like my whole organization is funded by our taxes, but this is now money that's going directly back into the Connecticut economy. It's not I wouldn't say that's a bad thing. I mean,
what if you keep that money in the pockets of the people who earned it in the first place?
Then it's not going back in the economy. You just helped me say that trickle-down economics doesn't work.
Right, and I disagree.
That's anarchy. I think
that's not even trickle down. That's letting people keep their money.
Well, no, that's the whole point. Like the argument for trickle down is if you tax the wealthy less, you tax corporations less, the money goes into their pocket, and then they go in turn and put it back into the economy. They hire more people. They pay more in wages, right? They're like, hey, look, I'm making more money. Let me give it to all my employees, right? That's the theory behind trickle-down economics, and that doesn't work. It's not what happens.
So I think we've actually been mixing this up. This was actually a shower thought, legitimate shower thought. I was in the shower when I thought of this. I think we've been mixing up trickle-down economics with just lower taxes. I think trickle-down economics specifically focuses on actually giving tax money or dollars to companies, like subsidies or...
No, trickle-down economics is reducing taxes on corporations primarily, also wealthy secondary, because they kind of go hand in hand. And the idea behind it is the money gets generated and goes to the top, goes to the companies, goes to the wealthy. They then trickle it down right out of their pockets through companies and through hiring and paying more in salaries and whatever back into the economy. That's what trickle-down economics is supposed to be.
Right, which is just obviously and apparently true. But anyway.
Yeah, because that's what the wealthy person does. They say, oh, this is how much I needed to make. Now I'm going to start paying everybody more even though I don't have to. All right, let's do that.
We can all, I hope, recognize that certain tax expenditures definitely stimulate the economy because there are productive social programs out there. Reinvesting money into nonprofits, for example, that otherwise just simply wouldn't exist. The reality is, I can speak on this because obviously this is my profession, but nonprofits would not exist. There's no way in any reality that a nonprofit survives solely on individual contributions. If there is, they're unicorns. Congressional Coalition on Adoption Institute, celebrity foundations like what Mark Zuckerberg has going on. But besides celebrity foundations and philanthropic endeavors, you would not see these programs such as myself. We would all dissolve, right? Like I'm not just being like, oh, well, we all drive on the road. So the taxes that go into some scholars do not benefit everyone directly. They benefit a portion of students. And then because those students do better, everyone benefits, right? There's social programs that quite literally require tax expenditures that make all of us better off. We are all better off investing taxes by having higher taxes that allow certain organizations to thrive, certain individuals to experience upper mobility, because otherwise the alternative is it's not just cookie cutter, right? The alternative is these people go to jail. These people end up homeless. These people end up doing drugs in an overwhelming emergency rooms. These people don't have health insurance. Because they don't have health insurance, they overwhelm emergency rooms and ambulances because they overwhelm those.
You didn't talk about crime. Usually crime increase, right? That's a big one.
Right.
All of them increase. So taxes.
I understand that concept, but so there's a couple ways that the conservatives would push back on that. Like one, is that even the purview of the government? Like, is it their job to stimulate the economy, or is it their job just to protect us from enemies, foreign, domestic? Or two, you saying, and I've thought about this a lot. You saying that these organizations couldn't get funding if the government wasn't doing it. I actually push back on that, right? And so, like a lot of times, it's like any argument that you have. Like, all right, we have the FDA. And then you say, okay, well, what if we get rid of the FDA? Oh, well, all of our milk will fucking instantly spoil, and all the companies will be trying to take advantage of this. Like, and everybody just goes to this really crazy place that would never actually happen because people are actually humans and we make human decisions. I think in the absence of government programs, you would find a massive rise in individual philanthropic efforts, especially since the taxes would reduce.
No, I actually fully disagree with some of your commentary. Like we've had these programs. I'm not big government. I don't generally want all these different social programs, but there's some that I think are important. And a lot of the ones that are in place right now were formed because things were taking place where people were screwing over other people. Right? The FDA wasn't like, hey, you know what? Right,
forget about the FDA then. That's sort of tangential to this argument.
So I work in the financial industry, and over the last, 90 years or so, there's been a lot of major legislation passed that continues to further regulate my industry because people take advantage of the situation and screw other people over. And so the government keeps putting legislation in place to fix these problems where people are taking advantage of other people and are abusing the system. And your argument right there was we're all humans, we're going to make good decisions, but that's not the case.
I said decisions.
People
we'll all make rational, self-interested decisions.
Right, but not decisions that are the best for society. And that's the point of government coming in some cases and regulating what can be done. I mean, is it
the government's job to inform me what is what a moral situation is?
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting topic. But murder is. Go ahead, Chris. I'll let you talk. Sorry.
Oh, thanks, and I'll be quick. But wholeheartedly, it is the government's responsibility because the government can tell us what's moral and what's immoral because we are the government, right? And a participatory representative democracy where you can get involved in your town council, where you get to end up choosing who runs for governor on your Republican committee, who then ends up getting voted and elected in. You have had a say in what morals are, right? When you feel the government is telling you what to believe, that's because you're not participating enough, honestly, right? That's the problem with so many Americans is we don't get involved at local levels, at higher levels. We're not engaged in the participation. And granted, look, some people can't and get involved.
Right. I would say that's not even realistic. You wouldn't even want that level of participation.
But all three of us could, realistically, if we all wanted to get on our Republican, Democrat town committees, we're all fully capable of it. The only thing stopping us is Netflix and chips, right?
And having a life. Yes. That's what's stopping me from being the CEO of Fortune 500.
You're so PG, company. Chris. That is Netflix and chips is not what's stopping me.
No. No, but I will say this too. I've been having this thought a lot. If we really want America to be this great country, if we want us to be America first, right? Why aren't we looking after people in governmental levels, right? Why aren't we doing things like canceling student loan debt? Why aren't we providing at least subsidized private healthcare? Why aren't we making sure that more people get better tax incentives on first-time home buying, second-time home buying, right? And look, lock out people that don't want to come to this country, but make it really good for the people who are here, right? Like that's my mentality. So yes, the government should protect people, but the government also should stimulate the economy and should provide opportunities to make sure we are the best country, which I think right now
we're froze at the perfect frame.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Sleepy Chris Biden over there.
That's okay. I was liking your rant there, though. Keep going right there. The government should what?
Should look after its people. If we really want to be the best country, if we really want to be America first, why aren't we looking after our neighbors? Why aren't we subsidizing?
Right. I would say this simply, right? So there's just two big things. Once again, the country was founded on a particular set of principles, one of limited government. And there's reasons for that. It's not just principles that we hold to for religious ideology. And then number two, which is partially related to that, we already do not have money for the things that we do now. We just don't. Right? And which of those hyper important things that we're already doing right now are you going to cut to make way for those things that you want to pay for? Because all that stuff is money.
So to your point, so I do think we have the money to do more things and to also cover what we're doing.
How?
We need to be more efficient with how we're taxing, how we're collecting it, get rid of loopholes and tax better, right? And increase taxes if you need to.
So ultimately, you just boiled that down to we need to take more money from people.
Yeah, generally. If we want to pay for what we're even doing now, we have to pay for it, right? Like if we're getting the benefit, then let's pay for it. But the point I wanted to make second to that was, oh man, my brain just went. What was your other?
I interrupted you. I said two things: limited principle of limited government, and we don't have no money.
Oh yeah, limited. No, that brought it back. So you talked about this country was founded on certain principles, and you know, we've talked about it before. I'm not very religious. Yeah. I'm not religious at all. And so, you know, I kind of find a lot of hypocrisy in a lot of religions where they go back and look at their religious text and they pick and choose, which particular pieces they want to hold on to and say, I believe in this. Oh yeah, but I'm not that one, right? That one, they didn't really mean that, that was okay. But, I think a lot of times the constitutionalists and the people that go back and say we were founded on these principles do the same thing. When we were founded, we had slavery. Women couldn't vote, right? A lot of things have changed since we were founded. Most men couldn't vote. Exactly. But we've changed a lot since then. And to go back and say, yeah, those we needed to change, but everything else is good. Everything else is perfect, but not those, is to me hypocritical.
Yeah, but that's a broad generalization, right? So and again, we both made broad generalizations, obviously. And we would have to talk about these specific issues that we think the country was founded on, right? And you could get into the principle of limited government, right? Which has nothing to do with women voting or men voting or whatever.
My point is, regardless of what the principles were when this country were founded, any of them and all of them are up for discussion and change depending on what culture is today. Things change. We need to be able to adapt and change and better ourselves. Looking backwards and locking ourselves in place because of what somebody else said or did or believed some 100 years in the past doesn't make sense. And I'm not saying we need to change. Don't take it that way. Mm-hmm. But we also have to be open to it. And to just close our minds off to the possibility of change because this is how it was done in the past, I think is dangerous and ignorant.
Yeah, I'm pretty similar. I think I'm a bit more, strangely enough, I'm a bit more strict constructionist, which is the fun political term for sticking to the Constitution as it was written. However, as the Constitution was written, it does have mechanics for changing it. Not saying that we should, but it does. It does. They were open to these things. But beyond that, the Constitution doesn't make decisions on healthcare. It doesn't make decisions on student loan forgiveness and whatnot. All it does, it tells us what we can't do and what we should protect. The Constitution doesn't tell us, no, you need limited government. You can't pass student loan forgiveness. The Constitution does say if you pass student loan forgiveness, it needs to be equal and fair. It needs to make sense. You can't discriminate based on income. You can discriminate based on race. So, for example, you couldn't just say anyone under household income of like $60,000 a year gets loan forgiveness. you could say everybody across the board gets $20,000 forgiven off of public loans, right? These are things.
Then you can have people crying discrimination against people who are going for high-end careers, right?
No,
so
you won't.
That's going to be discrimination against doctors because somebody going for their associates can get most of it covered. For all of it.
But then you can also say, principle of decision. You chose to pursue a high-end career. Another person chose to pursue.
Listen, you can do that and keep the dollar amount at zero, right? That's where I stand right now, except I don't give any money to anybody. If you choose to go to college like I did and incur debt like I did, that's your choice. And you should do that with the people around you and yourself thinking critically about what you're going to do with this career and whether it will pay off for the money you're about to pay into.
Totally. I totally understand. I have debt. I went into it knowingly. I pay off my debt. It's a good time. I love it so much. But what I'm arguing is now I'm financially okay. What the point of student loan forgiveness? I think we get too much in the semantics of this. One, I'm framing this in the viability of the Constitution, but I'm going to go on a slight tangent and just say specifically on the topic of loan forgiveness. I think we need to be conscious that we're asking the wrong questions and we're framing it entirely wrong. Did you, the individual, choose to incur debt on your degree? Yes, you did. Should you pay it off? Yes, you should. Mm-hmm. What we're talking about is a collective. We're talking about the country's economic systems and ends justifying the means, partially, but also being pragmatic. It's more pragmatic than ends justify the means. It's simply put this way. If the three of us, if we all have student debt, which maybe we do, Tim, I don't know, do you have student debt?
Wish I had more now.
Yeah, so the three of us, we have debt. If 10 grand was forgiven off of each of our debt, I have probably, arguably, I might have the most debt in this room because of Harvard. The reality is all three of us get that much closer towards either A, buying homes, B, getting new cars, C, investing in new children, D, investing in existing children, existing families.
At the expense of taxpayer dollars. At the expense of people who don't know us and don't care about us.
Well, I'm sure all of us most likely received Pell Grants. We most likely, when we went to public universities are already subsidized by the government, by people who don't know us. But the reality is, by those subsidies existing, so Central Connecticut State actually on the books costs about $40,000 a year, $20,000 is subsidized, making it accessible to the public. If it wasn't accessible to the public, you'd have a lot less people going. Separate conversation. I don't think we should have as many people going to college today. That's besides the point.
Right.
The point I'm making is people are better off with educated populations. The quality of education, another topic. I don't think state education is as good as it could be right now. It's like a degree mill. But that's not the point. Having better quality education, educated populations, debt-free populations, or not in as debt populations is better for the country as a whole. Those people who don't know us benefit by us being able to buy homes quicker by 2 or 3 years than otherwise, because home ownership increases communities. It increases the value of a community exponentially. It's much better to have homeowners than renters, because homeowners are more likely to be involved in the community. They're more likely to take care of their community, take care of their home, all these things.
Those are very good reasons, but you're essentially giving me good reasons to steal somebody's money, right? That's
we live in a country, man. We all are a part of something. We contribute to taxes. That's not going away.
No, that's not. On principle, I think it should be lower than it is, but that's just a principle. We obviously have to go into the how and the why. But the point is that all of the things that you're saying are good things. It would be a good thing for most people to own homes quicker and sooner. But you're essentially asking me to join you and the majority to go ahead and vote against the people who have the money, to take that money from them because we think it would be better for us to have stuff. Right. I
think also it's this, the reality is in your lifetime, you will have paid well over $10,000 in taxes, and you'll actually pay a lot more in taxes the sooner you're a homeowner than otherwise. So you're actually kind of paying off your own taxes, your own relief that you're receiving. You're stealing money from yourself, just your future self and whatnot. Taxes aren't just, hey, let's take from the rich and give to the poor. It's, I contribute taxes every year.
Let's do that though. $10,000 in taxes, and you were saying what, 20,000 off people's debt. So there's 10,000 from somebody who doesn't care.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
And I have to say, Chris, you're not even talking about, like, say, Bernie Sanders' platform, which is free college, right?
Oh, no,
so like $100,000 or $50,000.
I'm not here for that. I'm here for free community college, which is already basically free because of Pell Grants. But also, I'm here for debt forgiveness before college, free college. And I think most Democrats are like that. Bernie's plan has no weight in the Senate.
Wait, what's the difference? Why would you do debt forgiveness?
Because that's an incentivization. Think about it, right? If we can incentivize people, I would say debt forgiveness for degree holders. If you receive your degree, then you can get some debt forgiveness because you're then,
No. That's no good. Well, think about this, Chris. Because the whole idea about college is that it's a cost benefit thing, right? Is that I'm paying for this degree, but in the end, it's going to make me a valuable person to the economy so that I can then pay that back to the person who so graciously loaned me that money. If you structure it that way, you've done a complete 180 on that, where the people who incur the most debt and get the education now no longer have to pay it back, even though they now have the means to pay it back because they got their degree. The people who failed out of college early, you're going to keep them saddled with that debt that they no longer have the means to pay off.
That's fair. That's
but
fair.
Chris didn't say full debt forgiveness either. He said some debt forgiveness. So let's say like, I don't know what the right numbers are, what the plan is. I don't even know exactly where I fall in debt forgiveness. I'm but let's just say that, the policy was $10,000 of debt forgiveness if you get your degree, right? Whatever it is, but let's just say $10,000 worth. That gives people an additional incentive to agree to not go to college and just waste time and money. Now, I get your point, Nate, saying that, it's a personal choice. You go to college, you're trying to better yourself. It's something you're investing in, you're putting money into. But to that exact point, you're saying it's a benefit for you to be able to be a better contributor to society. Mm-hmm. That means it's also a benefit to society. And so why is it wrong for society to support things that is a benefit to it, right? And to Chris's point, if we decided to get rid of all subsidies for education, the population in general, many people wouldn't be able to go to school, wouldn't be able to get educated, wouldn't be able to push technology and advance our culture and all of our infrastructure as we move forward. And it would be a detriment to society.
So this is the same thing with the FDR argument, with the lowering taxes and charities no longer being funded thing. This is in the world that doesn't exist. If the subsidies weren't there for colleges would stop doing a whole bunch of ridiculous things that jack their prices up. They would hire half the faculty. They would stop putting in $40 million tracks every couple of years. They would stop putting a movie theater on top of the student center that nobody wants.
But those things are faults within the system, not that the system exists, right?
That's all part of it.
I think we're the
idea that a school's like, hey, we're going to give you X amount of money every year, but if you don't spend it, then you don't get as much next year because obviously you didn't need as much. That's why all those things happen, right? Yeah. So a school, like, the policies are broken. It's not the fact that some schools don't need money or need it. Like, maybe one year they're like, hey, we really need $20,000 to do X, Y, and Z to make this school good and be able to support our students and everything. And then the next year they're like, hey, we didn't have as much we needed to do. We have $10,000 extra. Well, we better fucking spend it on something, because if we don't, they're going to come in and say, well, now you only need $10,000 a year, right? Like, yeah, those types of policies need to be corrected. That's why we have abhorrent spending and issues. Not because we're actually trying to better people. I think we need to better management of these policies. And now, to your point, I think you're going to say, well, government doesn't manage very well. That's you don't believe that?
No, government does not manage very well. Yes, correct.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So and so I tend to agree with that. I think a lot of times that when things get into the public sector, public sector, they kind of fall apart, and there's not enough management and oversight. And that's what I think we need to work on fixing, not necessarily just removing policies as a whole.
I think
what do you think, Chris? You were in student government, right? You saw some of that stuff in the back end.
Yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing with you. I think we're talking about two separate things. There's major flaws in higher education right now and spending that's frivolous. There's issues with existing policies. There's issues with the ability to just bond endless money. That's problematic. That's why a lot of these buildings get put up. It's state bonding. It's not that they're just. So these are separate issues. Going back to,
I think it's the same issue. Oh, wait, how do you think it's separate?
Partially, but going back, well, yeah, because this inflates tuition, right? But going back to the population of students and existing adults, keep in mind, I think also we look at this as like student debt is like a new thing. There's a lot of people that in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s still carrying debt because of these high interest rates, because and they've been they paid well over their principal, right? And so, but they're still trying to nuke it. These are problems to me as well. It's more than just all right, we just subsidize a bunch of kids with theater degrees, right? It's deeper than that. It's the people that are in social work that have families and are still paying $800 a month that could be otherwise going towards their kids that then benefits the future generations, right? It's deeper than just, hey, let's subsidize a bunch of kids who just went to Central at a degree mill, right?
Okay, because but Chris, there's a direct solution to that. I don't want to cut you off, but right there, I know, but here goes. But no, but I want you to respond to this, because the solution there is not debt forgiveness, right? The solution is to pay social workers what society thinks they should pay them, which you think is more.
Definitely. I also think, to be fair, another way that I think could be an agreeable way to do debt forgiveness is career-based. So, for instance, sorry, I needed to catch my thought there. If you work for a nonprofit for 10 years and you pay an equal portion of your loan that is decided upon for 10 years without missing a payment, 120 payments, the rest of your public debt is forgiven. I think that's an amazing program, because the reality is we need people to go into these nonprofit jobs that pay exponentially less, right? I have turned down jobs that would have paid me $80,000 a year to make $50,000 a year, because I love my job. It's humanitarian.
Respect,
I pay it forward. Yeah. So, but that there's benefits to that, right? There are benefits to it. And one of them is that if I chose to, I haven't thought about it yet. I might not. I could do debt forgiveness in 10 years, right? That's something I could do. I plan on paying my debt way sooner than that, because I want a house, family, all that good stuff. But it is something that helps get people into the nonprofit world, right? Those group home workers that are making $14 an hour, they can do debt forgiveness because it's a nonprofit, right? But we don't offer, for the most part, those same benefits to individuals who are working like in social work for the state, because the state's not a nonprofit. So I would, and there's politics there, because then people go, well, why are the state employees getting this? So I think that there's arguments to be had, deliberations to be had. I don't have the answer to this overnight, but there's deliberations to be had that maybe we can incentivize certain types of work, or like shortages, or works that's high demand, or where we know that people are without a doubt taking severe pay cuts to work. Teaching sucks, dude. Who wants to make $40,000 a year to be working 60 hours a week just so you have 4 weeks of vacation at the end of the year? Summers off is 4 weeks of vacation. That's like a normal. Most people get 3 weeks, right?
That's
so for an extra week,
it's like 5 or 6 weeks.
Sure. So by working 60 to 70 hours a week, you get 2 extra weeks of vacation over the average person. It's not worth it. No one goes into teaching. We don't have good teachers. We don't have as good of teachers as we probably could. Maybe one of the ways that we can do that is loan forgiveness, especially because of laws we made teachers. This is because of the unions. Teachers are required to have master's degrees. That's insane. It's absolutely insane that we have that culture.
Wait. So I just got to point out right there. So I haven't talked a lot about limited government on this podcast. I mean, that was something that was really on a libertarian kick back in 2016, and it's kind of faded off at this point. But it's like all the stuff we're talking about, it's like coming back to me.
It's over 9,000.
So like right there, you have a perfect example of like the free market solves a whole bunch of problems. And I know you guys think I'm just like essentially religious, and I'm just like like a Trumpy free market guy, and it's just a religion thing for me. But like right there, for example, teachers shouldn't have that master's degree debt. There should that's a government thing. Having that requirement be
a requirement from a union. It's from a union. It's from the free market, my friend.
It's unions taking advantage of local governments.
Well, hold on. Did you just put unions under free market?
Unions are free
Yeah,
market.
unions are free market.
Unions are the antithesis of free market.
No, unions happen within a free market.
I'm aware that they exist in the free market, but they are not of the free market.
But they control the government because of the free market.
It was a counter move to the capital or to the Industrial Revolution. Like it is a counter to capitalism.
Teachers unions developed by Al Franken in New York as momentum against the state to be able to increase the pay of elementary. What?
Against the state?
Yep, against the State Board of Ed because they wanted to increase the pay of elementary school teachers to equal that of high school teachers.
And you answer me one thing though: unions are protected by the state, correct?
Because they've lobbied the state to get laws.
Okay, so unions are protected by the state.
There's laws that protect unions' rights, but also unions are able to negotiate those because they hold voting majorities or significant voting margins in populations that are then able to in like local jurisdictions that can then win over.
Okay, but we're having like a chicken and egg conversation here. The egg being the chicken being, I suppose, the unions, the egg being the creation.
The unions came first, yeah.
The unions came, then they got legislation to protect.
The legislation came first, right? Because you can't have a union because everybody just gets fired without the legislation. So the legislation came first, and then the unions were able to negotiate under the protection of the government, right? So, I mean, you look at it. I don't know how Elon Musk is able to do this, especially from California, because I'm assuming they would have the strictest labor laws in the country. But like, there's people. Oh no, is it Jeff Bezos is threatening to fire people who are agitating against the company? And it's like, that's a free market thing, being able to fire people who are trying to organize against you. The unfree market thing is the workers being allowed to come together and negotiate with the boss, even though you don't know how to run a freaking company.
Well, the unfree market thing is that the government protects that.
Yes.
But them doing so is within the free market.
No, them doing so means they get fired right away.
Sure.
In the free market.
And if everybody decides I'm not working for that company because they want to unionize and the company fires
other people,
and nobody decides to work for them, that's all free market choices.
Correct. And then the company would correct for that.
That's what I'm saying. Think about this. We are currently facing huge problems of a nursing shortage because working conditions for nurses in for-profit private hospitals are very poor right now, and so you're having a massive exodus.
Also, baby boomer, right? We need a lot of nurses.
You don't have. The reality is there's not enough people to just refill that with, right? Amazon, sure. Amazon is like chump change jobs for the entry level stuff. Anyone with 2 hours of training. And I'm not saying this to belittle Amazon workers. It's a hard job. But the reality is 2 hours of training preps you to be able to do the job of an Amazon worker, right? So those are replaceable jobs. Now, if you just have 10,000 people quit all at once, yeah, you're not going to fill 10,000 jobs all at once. You're going to have shortages. You're going to have problems. It's not as easy as just like, and so that's the power a union has. I'm not here to be anti-union on that level. Like if there's serious like worker conditions that are bad, again, I want to have the best country. I'm slightly nationalist in this. I want to have one of the best countries. If people are going through, dying at work, getting their arms chopped off or whatever, in a meat grinder, sure, unionize, get everyone to quit and fire. Where unions become problematic is when we look at like the teachers unions right now, where they have massive control over local and federal economies.
Yeah. Well, we agree on that, by the way. I just had a particular gripe with something that was said, but we agree that the teachers unions are sort of a stem for a lot of these problems.
And I see the, let me just, speak third person. I see in a sense how you can see that the free market is a solution. Because it's like, okay, if the free market had autonomous control, then teachers wouldn't need master's degrees in the first place. Their teacher pay would be higher. We would never be in a situation of student loan debt to begin with. And student loan debt, maybe that's a product of the government in itself. It's just one more
Why would teachers' pay be higher with a free market?
Because you'll have a much more direct tie between what people value and what's being delivered.
What part of unfree market that we have right now is keeping teachers' pay down?
Right now, there's public. I can actually speak pretty well on this. There's public perceptions that smaller class sizes are a good idea, and so having small class sizes. Think about it this way: if you have, say, you have teacher 1 and teacher 2. and each of those teachers has 24 students, and you pay $100,000 a year for these 2 teachers to serve 48 students. Each one has 24, right? So imagine like one bunch of little dots underneath them. Well, now all of a sudden, and this is happening across the country, it's already happened. People say, well, having 16 kids is way better off because I want my kid to have more one-on-one time with their teacher. It sounds good on paper, right? It generally sounds good on paper. I used to believe this until I was a teacher. Until I also researched it too. This is not just anecdotal. This is proven data. We just can't. I'll share it with you. There's a bunch of cool stuff. I'll share afterwards. So we say, all right, we're going to hire a 3rd teacher, and now teacher 1 has 16 students, teacher 2 has 16 students, and teacher 3 has 16 students. Well, now you're paying $150,000 for the same population of students that you could have just served with 2 teachers, and it actually shows that medium-sized classes are actually better off for students because you have higher opportunities for grade competition. You're able to create groups better. You can you have more education.
In that example, all the teachers still make the same amount of money. It's just that now we have more teachers and we're paying more for education, right?
No, they all make the same amount. But what I'm arguing is that if
so, my question was, what is it that's making us not pay our teachers more? What part of the government is saying, hey, we're only going to pay teachers this much?
Sure.
What is limiting how much we pay our teachers? To your point earlier, you said, hey, if we had free market, teachers would make more. So what is it that's stopping them from making more right now?
Well, let me just finish the point real quick. It's like what I'm saying is, if we only had those 2 teachers, we can pay each of those teachers $75,000 a year, and the 3rd one $50,000. Government regulates class sizes. Government regulates that we can only have X. We prefer to have 16 kids in a class or 18 kids in a class. The government has regulates pensions. It regulates collective bargaining.
But that all comes from not the union. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, but it all comes from what you were saying before, which is the population believes, right? And this is all part of what would happen in a free market anyway. If the population believed in a free market that having a smaller class size was better, and you had 2 schools, so this is how free market would work, right? You had 2 schools, one offering a class size of 24 students and one offering a class size of 16 students, and the class size of 16 students cost 30% more than the class size of 24 students. People would send their kids to the smaller class size because they're valuing it that level. But that's what should be happening.
But that's not the only metric, right? So people look at grades, people look at satisfaction, people look at a variety of metrics. People look at reputation, right? And reputation is a combined score.
I mean, obviously, schools are going to be different between each other, and I'm not trying to say that.
But my point is that if pretend let's say the medium-sized class school was doing better, right? It was cheaper and it was doing better because this other school picked up on this fad of smaller class sizes, and now they're paying more teachers, and the grades have gone down because it doesn't actually work. Nobody's going to send their kids to that school. It costs more, and the kids aren't getting as good of a grade, so they're going to be like, well, this school over here is doing better. We're sending our kids there.
Right, but by doing that, people aren't just going to say, oh, well, now we're going to go pay those teachers more money. Right, they're going to be like, oh, okay, now we're just going to pay them more.
So my question is much more complicated than that, right? So Chris talked about a lot of the inhibitors, right?
My question is still live, though. I haven't heard an answer to say, what is it that's holding down teachers' pay right now?
Chris gave you some of those answers. I'm going to let him go ahead again, Chris.
So because unions have negotiated, I want to be very clear. I'm not anti-union. I'm also not anti-regulation on teaching. I think there's roles. I'm not full-blown free market, but I am reform based on this. And part of that is that when we look at the numbers, let me take a step back, not looking at numbers. Unions have negotiated with state general assemblies and with state municipalities. The state municipalities and general assemblies due to right now, Connecticut, it's so funny. We literally have like vice principals in our general assembly who their only job is being in the general assembly because local school districts have just created a bullshit vice principal job. I can actually, I'll find them. They're a Democrat. I'll pull up their name. It is the funniest thing to me. They're from New Haven. And so you literally have legislatures in our state houses that are only there to be at, and there's also for the police union too. This is not just an exception to teachers unions. There's a police union member. Actually, the former president of the Senate, of our state Senate in Connecticut, was part of the police union. He was a worker of the police union. He wasn't just part of it. He was employed by the police union. These are legal things because the people, like, it's basically just like, oh, you don't like the law? Let's change the law. Unions have big voting margins because local election turnout is so. And I'm not saying, yes, we can go down a rabbit hole.
Would you say that would you say that a teachers union generally is going to be advocating to pay the teachers more?
You would think so, but it usually comes out a little bit differently. It comes out into collective bargaining, it comes out into pensions, which many teachers leave after their 5th or 6th year. So most people can't even capitalize on pensions like that, even though they invest in it. Teachers typically leave by their 6th year. Most teachers don't do a full 20. Very few actually do. And so basically all this boils down. There's a rabbit hole forever. We can say, well, maybe we can boost the local election turnout. So this way unions don't have as much power, but it's just not, we're getting caught. We're getting caught.
So do you think if there was no teachers unions, teachers would make more money?
Yes.
Some would.
That I do. On average.
Yeah, yep. I do. Wholeheartedly. I think that we're getting caught up in this idea of what things ought to be versus how they actually are. And how they actually are is low election turnouts, meaning teacher unions have stronger margins in elections, meaning that certain ideas like lower class size, because it is easier on the teacher. It is easier to have 16 students than 24. I think certain things have incentivized priorities on the teachers and not the students. And in turn, they have negatively infected the teaching profession. I have a friend right now, master's degree in special ed, making like 50, 60,000, and she just quit for a lot of reasons. But one of the reasons is how insane, and she's working at a really good school, suburban school. She gets, and I know Nathan, you're going to get wet over this because this is a full blown free market. She's now going to be a dental hygienist, which starting pay with an associate's degree is 80,000. 80,000. Yeah. And it's just like, why are we so why make $55,000 when you're having panic attacks, working 70, 80 hours a week, dealing with crazy parents,
ungrateful parents,
oversized class, even though she's in special ed, having a higher caseload demand than required, all to make 50,000, where at the end of your career you're only getting 70,000, and then sure you get a pension, but what's that worth when you could be making 80,000 as a starting salary of a dental hygienist? So I'm all here for higher teacher pay. I think we should pay our teachers like starting salary 65, 70,000. I think we should have performance pay for teachers. I think we should
pay for teachers. There you go, buddy. Come on, we can do it. Free market. I support
a lot of what you're saying. 100%. I think teachers should make more. I think the people that I'm sending my kids to that are going to spend outside of being with me and my wife the most time with should be of the highest quality, and you get what you pay for. I generally agree with that. What I don't understand is why having a group that is designed to advocate for the teachers results in lower pay. And I don't understand what it is about, and I'm not saying it's not true, I just still don't understand what it is about the current situation we're in that is preventing teachers from making what society values them at. And what I've always thought the reason for teachers making lower pay is unfortunately there's a lot of people that want to be teachers, qualified or unqualified. And because there's a lot of supply for that position, that there's not as much pay or demand coming out, right? And so because it's like, yeah, I'd love to be a teacher. I'd love to spend my time with kids. It's like my sister who's a nurse. She really wanted to be a nurse in the NICU, right? In the small child. Every fucking nurse wants to work in that area. So guess what? You don't make as much, and it's really hard to get there, and you have to be top notch to make less because everybody wants to do it, right? And so it's a lot of the same thing with teaching, right? A lot of people want to do that. It's a valuable, heartfelt, strong career choice as far as how you can impact other people, and people love that. Being able to impact somebody positively is something great. And so I think what ends up happening is people give up a little bit on the top end of pay because they get all of that on the outside. It's kind of the same thing as you, Chris. You've decided to go and do some things that you're passionate about and to do not profit work, right? Which is an amazing thing, to make less money. And I think that's why teachers make less, because a lot of those people are amazing people that do the same thing.
Maybe in certain suburban districts, but nationally we're in a teacher shortage for urban districts, which make up majority of the schools in the country.
Yeah, I think that's a whole issue we could talk about. Where you want to feel like you're doing a good job, but when you're working in a suburban area or in an area where the population is just not interested in education, it makes it very difficult to feel validated in your job.
let me put this out there too. Right. So Chris talked about a lot of the issues with unions. There's some other issues with unions, which is that unions prevent the firing of bad teachers, which overall depresses the quality of your average teacher, and therefore society feels like a teacher is worth less. Right.
Such a good point. You know, there's a really good. I got to pull this up. I got to get the exact number. I'm going to be pretty close to it. I believe they did like an evaluation of every single time a tenured teacher when a principal tried to fire them. So, and not just like, hey, you broke in policy and you have the right to be terminated. It's like the principal actually began the process of trying to terminate. I think out of like only 800 of these occurred in the whole country in like 2016, which means like a lot of people probably should be fired that never even reached the point that someone tries to terminate them. Of those 800, I think 4 were successful terminations, meaning that there was actual grounds for firing because of unions, because of tenure. Only 4 were actually fired. So it is almost impossible for a principal to fire a tenured teacher. And I think that's really problematic.
It is 100%.
It's not even tenure. It's just the unions in general. Right?
Exactly. That's the point I was going to make. So before doing what I do now, I was an engineer. I spent 10 years as an engineer, and the plant that I worked at was unionized. I don't want to give the name just for whatever reason, but as an example, this is no shit, pun intended when I tell the story. They literally caught one of the employees in one of the manufacturing floor restrooms. He shit in his hand, walked out and smeared it on the walls all over in the bathroom, right? Because he was mad at his boss or something like that.
Wow.
They could not fire him because of the union. He ended up only getting like a week off unpaid and then came back and continued working. Right.
Well, look at
these, and that's one example out of dozens that I have of the 10 years that I worked at this plant. And this is 100% a true story. One of my really good friends got his dad hired on there. His dad used to work at AK Steel prior to working at Siemens. AK Steel. I just said the name of the company.
You just said it. Oh my God, we're gonna get a cease and desist letter.
So his dad. His dad
Your old engineering job takes down left, right, and center of the podcast.
Right? Yeah. His dad worked at AK Steel. AK Steel is unionized. He gets hired at, if you didn't hear it, at where I worked. And don't hit rewind. So anyway, he got hired where I worked and came in and was working to the same level he was at AK Steel. And he got put into a corner by like 3 or 4 guys and was told that he's working too hard and he needs to back off.
Yeah.
And that he's making everybody look bad. So, and this isn't like somebody told me that this story happened. It was my friend's dad. Like, this story is legit and true, right? And he started to work slower. And he told his son, after like 2 weeks of working there, he goes, "This is the easiest job I've ever had. I do 1/3 the work and make twice the money as I did at this other place." And the other place was already unionized. So don't take me as a strong union supporter in general, because I think that they've gone too far in protecting the worker. And I think that you have to have the ability to fire people that are underperforming. My questioning earlier was purely on I don't see how having something like that supporting a teaching union, like teachers as a union, results in lower pay or worse conditions for teachers. That's the part that I'm still confused on. Because generally those employees had the best insurance, the best work environment. They could do nothing wrong, could not get fired. Like, once you got in, you were golden.
Yeah.
So how is that negative for teachers?
I'm happy to. We can
do it on another podcast. Let's talk about it.
Hey, you know what? I'm loving this rabbit hole that we're in. I don't even remember where we started with this, but I mean, I'm honestly loving the whole thing.
I'll do 2 things. One, I'll give you a great union horror story. I'll give you 2 great union horror stories.
We started on national debt.
Did we? Oh my God! Yeah, I wanted to make a point that the Republicans did something good. I didn't even get to that. Jesus!
But let me make two union horror stories, relatively brief, but also not to defer to a new podcast. But let me actually make like a PowerPoint presentation for you guys. Like, I can really dive deep into the cost of teacher pay and all of these things. Like, Tim, you and I were probably much more aligned on this than I was maybe 8 months ago. And after researching it, after taking an ed policy class, certain things I'll never change my mind on. Certain things like I will never change my mind on. Conservatives won't pull me to that side. I do actually believe in a lot of ideas that would be more popular in the Republican Party when it comes to education than progressives would like to acknowledge. But there's certain things I'll always be progressive on. But 2 union horse stories. First, let's just acknowledge, I won't call out names just for the sake of it, but one of the state universities.
If you're anything like me.
One of the state universities had a dean, the head of student conduct. The head of student conduct. The dude gets arrested for tying up his wife, trying to beat her to death. Kids run out of the house, get the police called. Police show up, rescue the wife. He gets arrested, posts $300,000, something like that, bail, gets out. The wife drops the charges, right? 6 to 7, 8 months later, just drops the charges because, maybe she wants the dad to be around for the kids because, the income that provides, maybe it's more toxic than that. Maybe she was paid off. Who knows, right? But the reality is this did happen. The police came in on it happening. There's no denying it. It did happen. The guy, everything's dropped. Court proceedings gone. His lawyer got him reinstated his job at the state university as the head of student conduct. Because he's unionized. How insane is that?
Yep.
Another good horror story real quick. When I was a teacher, because I taught 5th grade for a year or two, we had this is the most absurd neglect or abuse of a job I've ever seen in my life. I've seen worse, but it was just wild to me. So I was in a very low income school. So already we're strapped for resources, no substitutes. If I called in sick, we would do something called disbursement, where my 20 students would go to random classes throughout the whole school and waste the whole day. With no substitutes, no paraprofessionals. We never had an art teacher through the whole year. We never had a library teacher, but we did have music and we did have gym. But then what happened is the gym teacher in October realized that they had been teaching for over 20 years. And they had, for whatever reason, only used maybe 10 to 15% of sick days. Sick days are rollover because of the union.
All of them?
Not all of them since day
God.
one. They're not as long, right? So the rule is you can't use your sick days more than 4 days in a row, and then you need a doctor's note.
Oh my God!
They do Monday through Thursday. We had no gym teachers. On Fridays, we would have a gym teacher.
Why would you work on Friday? Why would you pick Friday as the day to work?
The whole school year, man. And so my students did not have a library teacher, an art teacher, a gym teacher at all. And then here I am stuck with, now I lose my planning period, the hour that I'm supposed to have, because I got students in. Now, real funny, unions actually made it so teachers can't lose their period. So what did my school do? They just paid me an extra $20 for it. So I made an extra $80 a week to lose my hour of planning that I should have had to do lesson planning and recover my mental health, because the reality is you need a break with your students, dude. You need a break.
Bandage your stab wounds.
Yeah, literally at times. So, I had kids get stabbed in my school, in my classroom. I had a kid get stabbed in my classroom. So 5th grade, right? So it was crazy and it sucks and it's not fair to the kids. Kids deserve an infinitely better environment than that. And that's
sounds like we need government to increase funding to these schools.
That's part of it. Huge part of it. But also, if we nuke the unions,
because I'm sure the government's limiting how much money goes to that school, right? It's not the fact that those areas have declined to increase their tax revenue to fund education in those areas, or those areas don't make enough money to fund the school through their taxation, right? It's none of those things is why they're not getting enough money, right? But if it was a free market, I'm sure there'd be more money in that school, and that school would be doing better.
No, the school would close down, and then the kids would have an hour-and-a-half bus ride to the school in South Hartford that they have gang wars with. So there's your solution with the free market.
Love it. Good stuff. Yeah, unions suck. in more ways than one. So to bring this all the way back up to the top, I was gonna say I don't remember what example specifically led us down this path, but I could probably making some counterexample, but I was gonna say do you have that meme still? You could bring that up so that we could get some original context.
I closed it. It's gone.
Well, all I was gonna say, and all I meant to say, is that although the Republicans have traditionally sucked at keeping to their principle of small government and less spending, all of the coronavirus relief bills put forward by the Republicans have always been about 2 to 3 times smaller than the counter offer from the Democrats.
Which
so,
is
you can see that it still exists. Say what?
It's like the worst thing to be frugal on. We're international pandemic, people's lives at risk, and we're trying to be frugal. We weren't frugal.
You know what I hate about all these bills is that they don't. I wish. So I get 300 years ago. This is going to be a huge vortex. I wish, when we were starting this country, 200, 300, several hundred years ago. I don't want to get into numbers because I don't feel like thinking. That I understand that you could only get together so often because you literally were on horseback or in a wagon, like hauling across the country to meet in Congress and stuff to do these bills. So I get that when you would do something, you had to like just smash everything together in one bill and cover it all together, right? But like in today's day and age, why can we not separate all the different topics and policies and vote on them and talk about them independently?
Yeah, you're right.
Why does a coronavirus relief bill have to include funding for a museum or funding for the Trump family or whatever other stupid ass shit that they're going to put in them? Like, I hate that it's like, okay, we'll help you. We'll give you this bill that you want to give relief to people for coronavirus, but only if you give us this thing that we want too. Like, fuck that. Just go on topic, Chris. One at a time. That's
a good question, Tim.
This is bipartisan. This is not Democratic only. This is by far both. Everybody
it is. Earmarking is bipartisan. But in this case, in particular, the difference between Republicans and Democrats is that the Republicans are trying to pass a bill that will give money to people. It'll be another check. And the Democrats are trying to then, on top of that, bail out all the shitty-run Democratic states. So let me chuck that over to you, Chris, with absolutely no nuance. Go for it.
Yeah. There's no way that's the actual thing. I've looked into it a bit. The reality is the Republicans are looking. Maybe I'm wrong, but the Republicans do not include a stimulus check. And it doesn't matter if a state is Republican or Democrat. If New York and Texas are both hit significantly hard by the pandemic, they're the hardest hit right now, I believe. They should receive some extra funding.
Okay, so but the difference is that the Democratic states were already in the hole when this began. So that's why it looks like it's just like a Democratic payoff.
Yeah, it's definitely not. Also, deeper than that, the Republicans weren't including a stimulus check. There's also big business bailouts with the Republicans. I believe that
and
small business, which I'm here for. Beyond that, I think there is earmarking's kind of lame. It's just part of the way things move around the hill.
How a bill becomes a law.
There's just not a better answer to like other than it's kind of just the way it's been, so the way it's probably going to continue. But I agree, it should change.
I mean, there's a reason for it, right? I mean, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, Tim. The earmarking thing is just like, I mean, these senators, they are working on national issues, which is what we've come to expect them to do. But their job is to advocate for their states. So, I mean, earmarking is actually them doing their job. Like, hey, I need money for this dam. This is my entire freaking job is to get my people back in my state funding for this dam, right? And so it's like, well, Congress is not going to pass a bill on your dam. I was going to say on your dam. Congress is not going to pass a bill on your dam, but we can include it in this other one. Nobody's against it, so we'll just throw it in there as an earmark, right? So, I mean, like it or hate it, that's kind of why it exists.
That's basically.
I think in some cases, I get that. That settles me a little bit. I've never really thought of it from that perspective, and I do think that that's okay in some cases. But it's not those types of things that I think really bothered me as much as it's like big national things that just get smashed together. Yeah, like it's like, hey, we want to pass this bill, and this other group's like, well, we also want to do this, and I know you don't want to do it, and the only way we're going to get this in is if you sign for it too. So we're only going to agree to do what you want if you do what we want, and we're going to put it in the same bill. And things I just don't think get discussed enough sometimes that way.
part of it's also like a time saver, to be honest. Like sometimes, like, when you have these giant bills, it's just easier to vote on one document than vote on.
They're only giant because they're earmarking everything.
Yeah, that's what.
Otherwise, you'd have 4,000 votes, right? It saves time to have one vote than 4,000. But I agree. There's definitely certain things that probably should get deliberated more on the. Part of it too is the reality is these things are deliberated, but in committee, so we don't really see it all. But they are deliberated on. Like any of those earmarks gets talked about in committee or in markup time. Markup, I don't know if you can watch markups. I think markups are just like this thing that occurs at the Hill. I know my friend works in it. Markups occur before and after committees. So we kind of miss out on some of that type of stuff. It's not private. Minutes are taken. It's recorded. It's all there. It's not like this is private.
It's certainly not generally publicly scrutinized.
Yeah, you're not going to watch it on C-SPAN.
C-SPAN, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I do have another news story, but we can talk about that.
Huh. All right. Okay. All right. So we wait. Let me do. Okay, I'm going to do a news story, and it's actually going to be quick because I don't think there's too much of a rabbit hole we can go into. I mean,
mine was a meme from SpongeBob.
I don't have anything from SpongeBob.
We spent 40. Mine was a meme from SpongeBob, and we spent 45 minutes.
I know.
On it.
That was great. No, but this one's. I mean, I don't know. Mine's just a news story. And we've already talked about this. We've already done a whole podcast on this. So, all right. So, let's do this one. Actually, we're just going to go through mine real quick. All three. Yeah. Just going to kind of like run through them real quick. So this document, if you guys can't read it, leaked documents reveal China severely underreported coronavirus cases as the pandemic spread. Oh my! Who would have thunk that the Chinese Communist Party would have underreported their deaths by about 50%?
Did you see that the CDC's? I think it's the CDC. CDC's reporting that they're now saying that coronavirus is in the States back early into December, and we just didn't know it.
There's early in December?
Yeah,
I didn't see that. Why did that come out recently? Because I heard like January.
Yeah, last couple of days. No, This is new. Yeah, they're saying that. Now that it had to have been here in December.
That's crazy, man. All right, so here's this other one. Nope, we're not going to do that. I'm just going to do my weekly excess deaths chart. So for everybody,
right, so we're getting better.
No, we're getting worse. Yeah, I can't really zoom in too much. It ends up going off the side. But again, here's the major spike in the beginning, right here. Then here's the summer spike when everybody was back inside in the air conditioning. And now we're starting to spike up again. We're keep in mind that this doesn't look so bad yet, right? You see us kind of spiking up just a little bit here at the end. Keep in mind that these numbers lag behind, right? So the hospitalizations go up first, and then the death count follows. So in the next couple of weeks, this should spike up a little bit. But we are, as of right now, it looks like we're just following the sort of standard winter increase in death curve, as you can see back here. And then this was a bad flu season, that kind of thing. So it looks like we're following that now, just like above because we have the coronavirus. But it looks like that is probably going to spike up a little bit further, right? As we see that the hospitalization rate is massively increased at this point. So I guess we'll see how that works in the coming weeks.
I have to say, this is anecdotal at best, but I don't know about either of you guys, but I know an absurd amount of people who have COVID right now. Like,
really,
two of my staff members have COVID. My friend and his whole family got COVID. I have 2 students with COVID. I have there was a massive COVID scare with.
Damn, I'm glad we do this virtual.
Yeah, no.
Get away from me.
Yeah, I'm only virtually meeting with my staff right now. There's only one that's actually come in and they're 100% safe, and we're wearing masks, sanitizing, social distancing, to the point that I was like, Yamaya, if either of us have COVID, if we find out we have COVID in 2 weeks from now, we will know that we were so beyond safe. There's no possible way we contracted it in this office. Like I literally hand sanitized like my pen before I gave it to her. Like I spray hand sanitizer. And I'm getting a bigger office, but that's that points aside. I know so many.
You're wasting money in your not profit on a bigger office.
Well, no,
I'm just kidding.
I'm just, so seriously.
I'll go. It's a fair market value.
I'm just teasing.
Thank you for your taxes.
Yeah.
You're the reason why we have 3.
Not me. I don't. My wife works for a nonprofit, man. I got all the support in the world for taxes and paying for some nonprofit stuff, right? You got to be careful because you can get some absurd things going through. But
no, we're super. I mean, if you ever are interested, I am so beyond transparent to a fault. I literally spent the whole first day of training showing my staff. I was like, I want you explicitly to know that there is no administrative curtain. This is our budget. We went through every page of the contract I wrote with DCF. So all 60 pages of it, went through every page. I showed them.
I would have quit.
I showed them how we process money on the Connecticut contracting page, the internet website for the internet website for Connecticut's contracts. So, whenever everything is taken on minutes, I actually there's something called GuideStar, and GuideStar is the nonprofit platform that Facebook uses when you process a donation to make sure. Yeah, I have all of our salaries posted there. I'm currently working on getting all of our donations, all of our public information up. So if you want to see that, anything that we do, it goes up. It's so crazy. I'm so, for example, we were supposed to start the contract in November. It began in December, meaning that both Yamaya and I, one of my staff and I went a month without pay, but we still worked. So I processed incentive pay paychecks out of our fringe benefits today for us because it's like, all right, $1,000 for you, $1,000 for me, because we just sacrificed several $1,000s to pay by starting a month later. All of that's transparent, all that's recorded, all of that was voted on by the board, all of it's public information. I submitted it to the commissioner. We're like, yeah, this is what we do, because I believe that nonprofits should have a absurd level of transparency. Like, you can see how much I pay for parking. Like, everything's
yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah. All right, so you had a couple more you wanted to run through. I had 2 I wanted to throw up. I'm sure Chris has another one. What if we throw them up but don't talk about them real quick? Just get them out there, get a laugh.
Yeah, I'm done. So let's do your. Done? Oh no, I wanted to show the one thing. Nah, I'm
good. Just not talk about it. Sure.
Nope, I'm done.
All right. I'll show my 2 real quick, and we won't dig into them. Mine are just meant for. So this one's hypocrisy back in 2016.
I can't read that at all.
I'll tell you. Donald Trump tweeted, "The Green Party just dropped its recount suit in Pennsylvania and is losing votes in Wisconsin recount. Just a Stein scam to raise money." That's what he quoted back here, tweeted
in
back
2016.
in 2016.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Oh, man. And then this one is, it was weird how Obama didn't pardon himself and Hillary and Biden on his way out the door when they committed the worst crimes this country has ever seen.
Yeah.
So just a couple funny quips, nothing big on those 2.
Hey, let me get this one up. You know what? I'll skip it. I'll skip mine today.
Okay.
But basically, I'll say it out loud because it won't let me load it up. But just thought it's kind of funny that I realize you guys are probably going to say it's a witch hunt, but there's a witch hunt. Partially unsealed documents from a federal judge of an investigation strongly shows that maybe it didn't happen, but at least somebody tried to, or negotiations were taking place amongst Trump's staff and a wealthy individual to buy a pardon. So that's fun.
Oh yeah, I saw part of that. I'm interested to hear about this, but at this point, it's
buried. You're not gonna find more about it.
So. Yeah. Okay, so I know we're not commenting on that, but and I can't actually get into too much detail anyway, so I'm just going to throw it out there. Actually, Ben Shapiro did bring this up on his daily podcast today. Apparently, that the DOJ came out and said, okay, so you guys are reading into the redacted parts what you want to, and it doesn't say what you think it says.
No, I agree. We need to know what the rest of the document says. It's just not enough to have the redacted document. But what I think happened is maybe somebody did try to actually buy a pardon, but it wasn't successful in the purchasing. So I think it's more of That's what I'm assuming. I don't think it's worst case scenario.
I don't know enough about it, but I knew just enough to connect what you said right there to what I heard Ben kind of talk. Like I was listening to him with like a half an ear cocked earlier. I'm sure it's the same thing he was talking about, and he said the DOJ has addressed it and said, no, that's not true. You guys are actually reading too much into that.
The only reason that would have happened is they didn't offer enough. Trump.
Stop it.
Pay for
Stop
it.
it.
He's got. The shit's out on the black market. It's out on the dark web. He's got a dark web Trump Twitter. You want a pardon? Just send over $1 million.
Well, his plan is, guys. Is like you buy a pardon, and then he pardons himself for illegally selling a pardon.
You know what? I got to say, maybe we should look into that while he's still in office.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? For the podcast, just in case. You think YouTube accepts presidential pardons?
From federal law, they have to, yeah.
Okay.
Not state and local law.
Okay. All right. So let's move into this topic that we had. This one's not going to be, we're not going to be too over the top about this. I didn't do an incredible amount of research, but this is one of those fun topics. Like sometimes you do this in the high school debate club. Sometimes I think this was. Correct me if I'm wrong, but people were talking about this a bit more back, maybe in the 2010s or the early 2000s. Yeah. People like it was a big deal that the death penalty debate. Just kind of like even abortion has kind of fallen off. Like we can definitely still get heated about that, but you haven't heard a lot about the classic issues, quote unquote classic issues, in a little while because I think the culture, at least
the last 4 years.
Right. The culture topics essentially, like even my guys, like you can say Trump is interrupting.
I think they've just been. Yeah, I think they've just been like. People are talking about him, but everything else is like Trump's blasting things through a megaphone, and so everything else just gets drowned out, right?
Well, everybody is
100%, right? Yeah.
So and it's just that the focus has shifted, but it's funny though because you can bring up, for example, the abortion argument, and it still has there's a lot of emotional investment there for a lot of people, right? A lot of people are still single issue voters on that, even though we don't talk about that as a country very much anymore. So I'm saying like that. I'm assuming the death penalty has that there's probably a lot of people who are still maybe not single issue, maybe not so many single issue voters on death penalty in particular, but I'm sure that it holds emotional resonance for a lot of people, even though we don't talk about it a lot in the national conversation.
It's a really great way to frame it.
So, Chris, I'm going to let you kick this off. So I'm not exactly clear on where you stand with this. So I'm just going to let you take the topic and run with it, and then we can bounce off you.
Well, I'll just share typically what the left believes on this. So prefacing this, my gut, to be totally honest, I'm relatively kind of for the death penalty, but pragmatically, I'm pretty much against it. So in practice, I don't think it really makes sense, but my gut instinct is like, there's definitely people that have committed such heinous acts. They probably should be sentenced to the death penalty. Pragmatically, it's not as simple as that. So typically the left morally also disagrees with the death penalty, which I can also, I would say to an extent, I vibe with. So this is what the left believes for the most part. First and foremost, economically, the death penalty, the left is totally against the death penalty. It is very unviable. Like, it's not an economically viable idea to have a death penalty. The reason for that is on average, when you look at death penalty cases, the individual on death row, due to litigation, do the prosecutors, because the reality is it's a huge thing for a state to sentence somebody. We need to be so confident that that person is guilty or guilty enough to constitute the death penalty. Yeah. Those are two different things, right? Maybe someone was an accomplice in a murder, but they didn't actually want to be there. And or maybe we thought they actually participated in the murder. How do you prove that, right? How do you prove it? So to be able to sentence someone to death, there needs to be no doubt. And obviously there's always at least a tiny bit of doubt. It's not black and white. And so therefore, due to litigation, due to the cost, people on death row easily exceed the amount of money it would have cost for us to just keep them in prison for the rest of their life.
Right.
Death row,
they do. Yeah, it's more expensive.
way more expensive. Morally, the way the left looks at it typically is that how we judge the lowest members of society is reflective on a society as a whole of our values. So the worst people of society, the lowest dynamics, crevices, how we treat those parts speak to the value of a society as a whole. So a lot of people, even though these are terrible criminals, we're like, we can't send them to death. Who even does that? Like, who is the one who has to pull the trigger or hit the chair? Like,
right.
How do you even justify someone's job literally going to be an executioner? How do we justify that? How do we pay them? Finally,
free market, baby.
There have been, the reality is,
I'm kidding.
Right? They do for free. Innocent people do end up getting the death penalty. This has happened several times that we've been able to prove. There have been people that have been fully acquitted that were wrongly convicted due to, the most famous case. It's literally straight out of oh my gosh, what's the famous book with Atticus?
To
Kill a Mockingbird. To Kill a Mockingbird. Yeah. So if you ever read Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson, I had a big support from my fiance. She was like, I heard like To Kill a Mockingbird to the room. There's actually a real life case that happened after this book. The book's not inspired by this. Brian Stevenson is a civil rights lawyer from Harvard Law, runs the Equal Rights Initiative, basically fights to get, he's been very, very successful on several things. For example, making sure that kids aren't sentenced to adult prisons, making sure that kids have separate prisons in general, especially when they're waiting for trial before conviction ever occurs, right? Because what if you're wrongfully convicted of a crime and you're 14 and now you're in an adult penitentiary? He's fought for a lot of rights in that. One of his most successful cases that made him quite famous in the legal world was he did get someone acquitted off of death row, somebody who was innocent but the sheriff, the police forged evidence. They were able to truly prove that, they literally arrested this black man simply because they were looking for a black man. And this guy happened to be a black man. So these are all the reasons, why the left is against the death penalty. For the most part, I'm pretty much against it because all those are really compelling reasons to me. Even though when I look at some of these people in this world, I'm like, they have no right to live, right? There's some evil people. But pragmatically, when I look at all these evidence, I'm like, you know what? These all make a lot of sense. That's the left's tangent. I'd love to hear what you have to say for the right and Tim as well.
Yeah. So from what I understand, it was kind of funny coming into this topic because I sort of like you. I actually don't have very much strong opinions either way, which means, and I say it many times on this show, is I am of the right. It's certainly compared to everybody on this show, I'm of the right. A lot of times I don't do a very good job of representing sort of the more stalwart right or the far right, or not in the negative sense, but the people who are further to my right. Stop it.
The traditional right.
Traditional right. But I will stick up for the traditional right. So, I mean, you can be more right than me. And a lot of times I don't give them a good shake. So, but I do understand and I can articulate a lot of the arguments that the hard right or the conservatives put forward on this argument. So, I mean, a lot of the things that you said are they are a concern. And a lot of the conservatives would say, it doesn't really matter if it costs more to put somebody to death. Justice is justice, and if I think death for the crime is justice, it doesn't matter how long or how expensive it takes. We're going to kill them. Like, killing somebody is not necessarily an economic argument, right? It's not. We're not saying like the argument isn't that we kill somebody because it's cheaper. The argument is we kill somebody because the sentence that the crime merits such a punishment. I'm probably we probably overlap almost exactly with what we believe. In certain cases, we believe the death penalty is probably relevant. I mean, there's incredibly egregious crimes that are committed, and it's generally probably for the better that these people are just gone from this world, right? And that would be justice in most people's estimation. And I do share your concerns. Me personally, again, and I'm sure a lot of people on the right, even the hardliners, we do share your concern that the evidentiary standard needs to be very high for putting somebody to death. And I have a few ideas about that, but for now, I'm just going to state the case of the right, and then we'll let Tim talk, and then we can talk about maybe what a good compromise might look like on this. So, like I said, hardliners. I mean, Ben Shapiro has a not very famous saying, but if you watch him a lot, he says this all the time. He says, "Rapists, I'm in favor of killing or castration." Right? So, what's that?
Get the Punisher logo.
Yeah.
God, I can't wait till that show comes back.
I would love to hear Ben Shapiro's line, but I really am dedicated on making sure this Punisher logo takes up my whole show.
I want that show back. That's all I want.
It's coming back. It's coming back.
Is it? Who's bringing it back? Same guy?
Yes.
Yeah. It's Punisher's coming back, and Daredevil probably is going to come back. The reality is the movement's so strong to get Charlie Cox back. All right,
you heard it here first, folks. That's our scoop. You can ignore everything else we said. I'm just going to clip this 30 seconds so that you know that the Punisher's coming back.
By the way, everybody else already knows. You need to stop watching so much Fox.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, so a lot of times, I mean, you could say that there's some rational arguments for it, and then there's some not so rational arguments. And I'd say I think the conservatives are a little bit more in touch with some baser human instincts that the left is. I think the left and the right are in touch with different basic human feelings or instincts, and I think the conservatives are very much in touch with the very coming down, obviously, on law and order, right? And the death penalty, it's a very old institution, right? And it's something that requires little nuance to believe in, right? It's a very, like, they did that thing, everybody thinks they should die, and we're going to kill them for it, right? It's sort of that instinct that you get when I think most people have seen this viral clip where the father jumps over the podium to beat his daughter's rapist in the courthouse, right? And then all the deputies have to like pin him down and stop him, like, no man, don't do it. You can, it's not worth it. He's going to jail for life. Leave him alone. Like that kind of stuff. Like we all were like, yeah, that father should get to beat the absolute ever living shit out of that guy, right? And it's like this deep emotional feeling that we have, and I think that's a large part of it to me. I know there's some, like I said, there's some logical arguments to it. I'm not doing with them because I mean most people don't talk about that these days. I think it is mostly an emotional thing. So I'm curious, Tim, what you think about this topic.
I'm very logical about it.
All right, let's hear it.
So, I try and look at it as what's the value of it. So if we take a step back, kind of, yeah. So like if we take a step back, and we look at the prison system and punishments in general, right? They're there for a reason. They're there to prevent you from doing a crime by having a punishment in place.
Yeah.
They're there for rehabilitation if it's a crime that that you could be rehabilitated from if it's just a lapse in judgment or whatever. And they're there also to remove somebody from society to prevent further danger to others, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're kind of there for, and there's probably more reasons, but those are the first three that come to mind, right? Like punishment, so to prevent you in the first place, knowing a punishment's there, removing you from society, prevent further danger, and offer the opportunity to better yourself and change so that you can go back into society and be beneficial. Obviously, for a lot of crimes, the death penalty is not even on the table for any of those.
Right.
And the only one that really, of those three, that really the death penalty falls into is the removing you from society so you can't be a further danger to people, right?
Well, some would say prevention as well.
Prevention.
Yeah, but to be fair.
Sure. Yeah, I can see that. It took me a second.
Right, but I think Chris probably has a poignant
point
go ahead, on that. What are you going to say?
Yeah, so laws don't actually, for the most part, they do. They definitely do. But a lot of times there's the idea of retributive justice, this idea of like deterrent, doesn't function as well as we'd like to believe it functioned.
It 100% does. It functions. Are you kidding me?
No, even you were saying it didn't, Tim. You were saying you said it was to remove the people from society. It's literally just to remove them from society.
It has multiple. No. It has multiple death penalty.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I think the death penalty has a larger portion of it is for that, and I'll get to the reason why I say that is the current, like, let's say I kill somebody, and some states have death penalty, some don't. But so let's just say across the board in any state in the U.S. I kill somebody, more than likely I'm getting life in prison at best, right? In some cases with parole, some without, whatever. Right. If it was just pure like murder.
Right, depending on your age, the circumstances, all that.
Yeah, and so the difference in my mind of life in prison versus getting, killed in prison or, having the death penalty is not a whole lot. Like your life is over. Your life is over. Your life is now that of either the states or it's literally over due to death penalty. So that's kind of my first point is, when we look at the crimes that we're talking about for the death penalty, they're not minor crimes. They're major, massive things where we've determined this person can't be rehabilitated. This is such a flaw in psyche that it can't be fixed, can't be changed. They're never going to be able to be re-released back into society, right? That has to be the first determinant point before you would get to, in my opinion, where you would be able to say death penalty. So you've determined that they can't go back into society. So they're either life in prison or killed in prison or death penalty. So what's the difference there? And I think one of the biggest points for me, and Chris mentioned this, was wrongful imprisonment. Life in prison at least gives you.
We'll all three agree on that, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So life in prison gives you some timeline where if you were wrongfully imprisoned, you have the opportunity then to appeal, to try and get further data. Maybe 20 years from now, some new DNA evidence comes up and you're exonerated, right? These things have happened many, many times. Yep. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I have spent some sleepless nights imagining what it would be like to just wrongfully imprisoned, right? Like, could you imagine somebody just kicks your door down, rips you out, throws you into jail? You're in court like, I didn't do it. And everyone's like, yeah, you did. And now you're in prison for the rest of your life. And you're like, how the fuck did this happen? Like,
it happens.
That is nightmare fuel, man. That is so absolutely terrible and terrifying.
That's honestly, if I could just tangent real quick, that's where the social justice movement gets me the most. That's where I am the most sympathetic, is just when I hear stories about that. That one makes me, that one makes me, like, obviously it doesn't make me flip sides, but that one's the one that makes me sit there the longest thinking about, okay, I got to make damn sure that my side is correct on this stuff, is when I hear about stories about it, in social justice, it's always the black guy that gets picked up and wrongfully imprisoned. But those kind of stories are just the most horrific to me.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't care about race. It doesn't matter if you're white, black, or whatever. Like, that happens to you, and that's terrifying. It happens more to blacks, I'm sure, based on anecdotal, evidence, and that's I wish it didn't.
Statistically, yeah.
Yeah, statistically. I just don't know the statistics, so I say anecdotal because I've heard it from people and stuff. But it doesn't matter who it is, man. Everyone's a person. Everyone's a human, and that is terrifying, right? And so on that front, I would be, anti-death penalty because I would like to give somebody every second to be able to fight their way out. And unfortunately, we don't have data to support and say what percentage of people that were wrongfully imprisoned, got out within 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, because my guess is a vast majority of people that are wrongfully imprisoned, we don't know about, right? I'm guessing it's probably, and this is again anecdotal, the few that are able to write their name.
What do you think about that, Chris? I would guess, especially the people who are wrongly imprisoned, that they really just keep going with the appeals even after they're in.
Yeah, they do. I mean, but so does everybody else who's actually guilty. So they kind of get
I would like to see some data on that. I'm not, calling you out for not having data on this. I'm genuinely curious. I'm sure there might be maybe some kind of data like that out there. It'd be very interesting.
Yeah, I don't know what could be out there, because it's like the ones that you don't know about, you don't know about. So you can't really say,
Yeah.
like, what if everybody in prison was wrongfully imprisoned, but nobody knew that?
Right.
Right? Like, how would you know how many there are? So I think it's really hard. I think it's really hard to try and narrow that down. Yeah, right.
You actually might, you know what? You might actually be able to do that. Right? If you go in there, you're not going to get an accurate survey, but if you did like a nationwide survey, and this is obviously going to be biased in one direction or another, but if you went into every single cell and you said, "Hey, we're conducting a survey. This absolutely cannot be used in court. I just want to know, did you do it?" Right? And then see what they say and see how that goes. That might be possible, right? You just get some brave college students.
Yeah, maybe. You'd probably get some data, but you'd have to question.
Yeah, you'd have to, heavily.
Until we have technology, which I think will be here sooner than later, that can more accurately detect, lying and things. Because we're already able to. This is a bit of a side tangent. They're already able to tell you what you're thinking. So they can put electrodes on your head, and like it takes a little while for them to train their machine because every brain's a little bit different. But there's been studies where they put these electrodes on people's heads, and then they watch them, and they can show the picture of what these people are dreaming about to some extent.
Yeah, right? I saw that they threw together a picture.
Yeah, they're like he's dreaming about a red bird, right? That's the detail that they have. They don't have, they can't say what kind of bird but like they can do these types of things. So I don't think it's too far out until we're able to at least determine, like, hey, this part of this person's brain is activating, which is meaning that they're full of shit, right?
Man, you're opening a whole other bag of ethical issues. I just
but until we get to that point, you don't know if someone's lying. So, okay, so that's my biggest argument and feeling for no death penalty is you give somebody the absolute maximum amount of duration to prove their name, right? And is that, the question then is the cost of having somebody in prison for their life and whatever worth it to society for hopefully the vast few that are wrongfully imprisoned. God, I hope it's the few, right? And that's the tough question. So to go back on some of the things you guys have said, it shouldn't be that the death penalty is more expensive than life in prison. That doesn't, depending on how old the person is, if they're 98, fine. But if they're
what do you mean
18,
because I'll plagiarize from Chris earlier in the podcast. There's the world that is, and the world that the world that we want to see, and the world that actually is, and the world that actually is that it is this expensive. So what do you mean by that?
Right. So if I'm convicted, and I go and I'm convicted in court, and then maybe I fight it, and I go to another court, and I'm still convicted, and I fight it, and once I'm done with my appeals, right, and I've gone through my appeal process, which unfortunately takes way too long in this country, then what's the point of making it like, okay, you're convicted, you're sentenced to death 10 years from now, right? Like, it should just happen. If it's going to happen, right? So I'm not saying it should. I'm kind of just talking out loud in a way.
Yeah.
It's the opportunity for it to be exhausted, whether or not it's where appeals come in. It's the opportunity to exhaust whether or not the person truly is guilty versus innocent. One thing I wanted to bring up too is something you mentioned earlier. I do believe there is a way to study this. The way you'd have to do it, though, might border on ethical or non-ethical. If you were able to find, say, this would have to be done in a state like California or Texas or New York, where you have a huge prison population.
Right.
If you were able to, for instance, survey, let's just say 100 prisoners, right? You do two separate studies. One of them is with 100 random people. Another one is a trial, is your control group. One of them is the variable group. The control group, where you have 100, say, prisoners. If you know that, say, 30 of them are actually innocent before they know, this would be like within days. Like, their lawyers have exonerated them, and then you come in, but they don't know they've been exonerated. You see what I mean? The court date to acquit them hasn't yet occurred. But you know of 30 people who truly believe they're innocent, and they've been fighting it, right?
Yeah.
if you can go survey them before they know that an acquittal has been successful, it would be like within a day. The lawyer would have to already know about your survey. You go in and do it. They can't know that the lawyer is doing X, Y, and Z because it borderlines unethical, right? You can't like forego their acquittal.
Right.
You can't like prolong their acquittal for
Well,
research.
to your point, you could also do a study like that in a large section of a population that's large, and then wait 10 years and see how many actually get it overturned. Also,
That's another way. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so some of those. So that for there, you correct for the people who you're only correcting for the people who didn't do it but lied and say they did. The thing that's almost impossible to correct for is the people who did do it and say they didn't. Right. Because
right.
those
Yeah,
people are never getting out
yeah.
of jail, and you're never finding out whether they lied
Right.
or not.
So I guess to continue where I was going with this though is like the majority of people that get life in prison, it doesn't get overturned. Right? I don't know the numbers. I didn't do a lot of statistical research before this because I felt like this is more of an emotional discussion than a numbers discussion, but I'm turning it into a numbers discussion, so now I kind of wish I'd have done some research. But I mean, imagine it's got to be, a vast minority of people. Because if it wasn't, you would think that the fact that all these people that were getting convicted or getting found innocent afterwards would be an upheaval in society, right? I wouldn't stand for it, even if it was 1% of people. That would be way too many.
Oh yeah,
They're actually, ready for something terrifying. There's actually a lot of studies on this. I'm looking up right now. Chicago Tribune, Innocence Project. There's a few other studies I'm finding. There's an estimate between 2.3 and 5% of all U.S. prisoners, with the Chicago Tribune saying about 1%, meaning that anywhere between 30,000 and 120,000 of our prison population is probably innocent.
Okay, so again,
what?
Out of how many total? Was it
out of about 2 to 3 million incarcerated, to about 30 to 100,000 are probably innocent.
So how many of them are going to get it overturned?
I don't know. I haven't read that far in the article, but probably not many.
That's more my point. Not so. Anybody wrongfully imprisoned shouldn't be. I don't question me on that at all.
Of course,
right?
we all agree.
Yeah, but looking at it from a practical standpoint, how many of them get it overturned? Right? 0.01% a year. Whatever. The reason I mention that is, like, we look. If you look at it from a quality of life standpoint, like, what's better, living in prison for 50 years before you die, every day waking up, looking at those bars, knowing that you're innocent and that you're not going to get out, and that, like, just dealing with it, or just ending life at that point, right? And so I'm curious what people think. I don't know where I stand on this. I generally I value life, I think. So I think if it was me, I'd rather live as many days as I could in a prison cell rather than not living at all. But I think other people might not feel that way. I know my dad probably wouldn't feel that way. My dad would feel like
always try to
just
commit
put me down.
suicide. Don't advocate. I don't know.
You probably would just adjust. I mean, we don't really know until we're in that situation. I mean, people want to live for the most, but some people, I mean, look at Sandra Bland. Sandra Bland was wrongfully arrested. The cop was fired. I don't know if you guys know the Sandra Bland case, but Sandra Bland gets pulled over. You can listen to the audio transcript. The cop pulls her over because he was zooming up to her. She doesn't signal. She moves over. Police officers are trained to this mentality of, it's something called go beyond the ticket. So police officers, I actually looked this up. I read the manuals. Police officers, this can be, I want to take one note without, I realize there's a lot of opportunities probably to cut off. I just want to say there's a whole podcast we can designate on actual police protocol, because I've been reading into it. There is legitimate reason to go beyond the ticket in certain areas. This was a low crime area. Most criminologists would say there's no reason to have done this here. She was just moved to Texas, got a job at a community college. She was going to be working as like an administrator. Gets pulled over because she didn't signal. Police officer notices that, wow, there's only one key on the car. It's because she's driving a rental, because she just she just bought a new car because she just moved from Michigan to Texas. She had Michigan plates. That's kind of strange, out of state. Her car is filled with wrappers. She just drove for 6-7 hours. These are all signs that cops are trained that something might be off. She's agitated because she just drove like 6-7 hours. She's like, there's no reason for me to be pulled over right now. And so then eventually the cop starts getting really pissed off, pulls her out of the car, throws her against the hood, handcuffs her, and throws her on the ground. Another cop comes by, and then she ends up taking her life in prison, in the holding cell, because she was just so distraught by the whole thing. She thought that she was gonna she thought she was gonna spend time in prison. She thought she was gonna lose her job. She thought all these things, and it's just like she just moved from Michigan to Texas. That sucks. That really sucks. So I think that wrongful imprisonment can really, torture people's soul. Absolutely. At the same time, I think that a lot of people also just kind of adapt. I imagine, it's a new norm. People want to survive.
So. I think maybe especially males, right? And I'm on the side that believes in the inherent differences between men and women, but I think I
do not.
I think males adapt to those sort of brutal hierarchies a little bit better to women, right? Usually because I don't know, we won't get into that, but I think prison is oddly in a lot of ways more of a relief for men like that, because they're limited to the simple variables in front of them. There's 2 prison gangs. I join one or the other. This is what I have to do to survive, and it simplifies it for those men. And that's speculation, obviously, but I just kind of tend to think that that's how that goes.
Interesting.
So to kind of get back to where I was at, like for me, it's
hurry that up, because there's something I want to bring up, and then we're going to wrap up soon.
Quality of life for the person. Like, is it more quality of life for them to live there, or to just, as you would with a pet that's not living a good life, right? Put them down,
oh, no.
right? Like,
what a tragic metaphor.
It is. It's terrible, but I mean, it's the reality, right? This is what we're talking about. Like, killing somebody is never easy. Killing a pet is never easy, but it's a decision that sometimes has to get made in extreme circumstances. And that's what we're talking about here. And that's what a lot of people don't want to remember, is getting charged and sentenced with the death penalty is an extreme circumstance. It's not like you ran a red light and you're like, bitch, you go into the electric chair, right? These are not normal crimes. These are extreme crimes. And so
I don't look, I mean, the option for somebody to kill themselves is almost always there. I mean, you have this is really weird conversation at this point. I mean, you always have bed sheets, and you can always pull a Jeffrey Epstein. Like,
wait, you can always get murdered and have it covered
up?
Right,
yeah. Everybody has that option, right? Everybody can have the cameras turned off outside their cell, and then choke themselves and break bones in their neck that shouldn't be broken just by choking themselves. Everybody has that option.
So to kind of close out my thought, to go back to where I was starting, to me this is
we're demonetized. You know what, Chris? I thought you were looking at your phone this whole time, but
your camera's frozen. To go back to my point, so to me this is really a cost issue, right? Like, taking into account wrongful imprisonment. If we could take that out, let's say we could just remove that, which isn't the case, but if you could, to me, then it boils down to, is it cheaper for society to pay for this person to be in prison for the rest of their life, or cheaper for them, or I shouldn't say cheaper, because I don't want it to be a dollar issue.
Well, I mean, is it or is it not?
It is a dollar issue, but it is a dollar issue, but it's also a different issue, right? It's like, is it better for society? Let me say it that way, because there's other things other than just pennies and dollars and whatever that come into play. Like, you could have these people working on a farm or doing other things.
Yeah, but then the left is going to yell at you for slave labor, and I'll probably yell at you too.
I'm just saying, like, if I said, hey, you can go down this aisle here and get in the electric chair, or you can go over here and give back to society, and they choose to do that, right? And
right, the left is still going to say, what kind of choice is that?
I would actually say something a little bit more. Well, first and foremost, if we look at the 13th Amendment is actually quite funny. Let me pull it up real quick. I have it right here. So 13th Amendment, as it reads, it is
I feel like you're writing an essay where you're inserting a bunch of words.
Nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States. Slavery is actually legal in prison. Prison slave labor is totally legal by our Constitution.
Right, and in practice. Kamala Harris presided over some of it in California.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think like if you're going to give back, if a person can give back to society in excess of the cost of being in prison, then there's absolutely no reason for the death penalty.
If they're a death row member, they should serve the rest of their lives either in solitary confinement, which is basically torture, or they should go to death row. Like to me, I might be against the death penalty, but I'm not against if someone committed murder or someone like did some heinous act like a home invasion, they should not be able to go mow a lawn. They should not be allowed to go pick corn.
No. I'm not talking about getting out in public again.
Oh, you mean
he's talking about like slave labor.
I'm talking about doing things from within. Yeah, so that comment you just made is just an emotional comment, though. It's like, hey, this person did something wrong. They need to personally suffer. I'm trying to look at it from a higher level and say, this person did something wrong, but how can we as a society make it best for everybody else? I'm not worried about making that guy feel as much pain or as little pain or have as many living days on earth. Now, had it been my son or whatever that got attacked or killed or raped or whatever the hell happened that got him to that point, emotions involved, right? But in this particular conversation, I'm trying to think of it from a higher level, like a logical societal level.
Look, I can respect that. I really can. Like, I think all of us have clearly expressed that we're of two minds of this, and I think this might even be a generational thing. I think our parents maybe cared about this issue a lot more than our generation does, because I don't know what it is. Just our exposure to
Laden, you had the terrorist trials, all that type of stuff.
So
right. Let me put this out there.
Each one of you something. I just want to ask you something. This isn't a comment. I'm just curious. I'll tell you how I am on this. I'm going to give you a scenario. What would you do? And then I'm done.
Okay.
So you're out just walking down the street. A guy comes up, holds a gun up to you, and is trying to rob you. And somehow or another, throughout the whole situation, he messes up, drops the gun or whatever, and you pick it up. Right? So now you're the one holding a gun on a guy that was just holding a gun on you and was trying to rob you.
Yep.
What do you do?
I very close to apply this to. So the problem.
Hold on. No. I'm not trying to apply it to anything. I'm not trying to apply it to anything. I'm just trying to like. It's like for sure this guy was guilty and putting your life in danger. So there's no wrongful imprisonment. So this is like a mind experiment for you to think about how you truly feel about punishing somebody with death for something along those lines, right?
Strong arm robbery is not punishable by death.
Okay, so fine. So this person just shot somebody in front of you, and then he tried to rob you. He tried to rob two of you. He shot that person, held a gun on you because that person wouldn't give him the money. Held the gun on you and said, "Give me your money or else."
Yeah, right? Like if it was my fiance, I'd be shooting him in the legs, random maybe person. Like shoot through the mouth or something. Like shoot him through the thumbs right here.
It's like a random person. You're on a bus stop.
Yeah,
it's nobody you know.
What? Oh, a random person?
Nobody you know. He just shot a random person. I'm gonna shoot him. I'm going to kill him.
Look, I mean, the problem is the situation is so dependent. If he drops the gun and I grab it in a scramble and he's coming towards me, I'm shooting him. If I drop it and grab it and then he just stands up and looks at me and then follows my commands, I'm not shooting him. But that's me.
I'm shooting him.
You think so?
Yeah, if I get him on the ground.
I'm telling you what I'm doing.
You guys are going to prison.
I think
this could just be because I've had this training before, but like I'm collected enough not to do that.
I'm not shooting.
I don't think I'm legal. I don't think I'm legally right to do so.
No, you're not. You'll go to jail. So the question. So his family will press charges against you regardless, because even if he's a piece of shit, his family's going to press charges against you and say, "Hey, like we have the footage on the bus. Yes, he shot that person, but when you grabbed his gun and he was just standing there, he wasn't a threat to you. Like if he was following your commands."
I'm not trying to think of this from a legal aspect, which I know in real life I would.
You mean a moral aspect?
But from the aspect of like in my mind, what I'm thinking of is
Yeah.
This guy just walked up on me and was willing to take my life, took this person's life, was willing to take my life, right?
Yeah.
For my wallet, for my money. That's how much he respected life. He put my life at risk. He was going to take my time away from my kids, whatever. Fuck him. Right?
Yeah,
like I would 100%.
See, now you're being emotional, and I love it. I'm here for it. That's kind of what the death penalty is.
Right. But so on that's the point I'm saying all this, and why I wanted you to think about it is I think emotion's important, and on an individual level, there's one type of decision you would make. I would 100% do it. But on a societal level, looking at it from what's the law should be for the land and I think there's a lot of other nuances. And so,
there's absolutely whenever you universalize something, there's a lot more factors that come into play.
Yeah.
Listen.
So, anyway, I'm done.
Since we're running out of time, and we can just maybe talk about this and maybe do your endpoints or whatever, because I think most of us will agree on this.
Yeah.
To the extent that we want the death penalty, all three of us. I was ruminating on this earlier. What would be the standard that I'm comfortable with the death penalty, right? Because we're younger people, none of us are hardcore, and I'm the one who's on the right on this. Do you think it would be? What if we made the standard that it's more than beyond a reasonable doubt, right? Because that's our justice system right now. You have to prove that somebody's guilty beyond reasonable doubt. What if we raise the standard? Like, that is a really good legal standard, like some of the best that's ever been. And it is probably the most, like, it's a very good standard, right? We probably can't go beyond that. Otherwise people will almost never get convicted. And then, so the tolerance is probably pretty good for that. But what if for crimes where they're going for the death penalty, that you first have to be convicted beyond a reasonable doubt in the regular court, and then in order to get the death penalty, you have to then convict them in a higher bracket. And that higher bracket would look something like you need to have absolute direct evidence that they did it. Like you need footage of the person doing the act. Like you can't have circumstantial evidence, you can't do forensic evidence. Like you need to absolutely 100% know that they did it.
I support that. If we really, because otherwise they just serve life in prison, and I'm also
right. Exactly right. So you're not letting these people go, but these people who absolutely deserve it do. I'm comfortable with that standard. What about you, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to up it to beyond any doubt, right? Like 100%.
Right, any doubt. Like forensics, forget about it. Like you guys are real good at your job, but sometimes you make shit up. Like I'm talking about like there's a video, or you did it in front of a crowd, or
the only thing that gets me on that, and again, I think we all seem to be on board that if you could get rid of the wrongfully convicted, almost all of the arguments against the death penalty kind of fade.
Sort of. I think
all of them. Like there's still some moral discussions in there for some people.
I think there's still some moral disputes.
But from a mass majority, I think for the most people, like, it fades. So what you're doing here is exactly that. You're saying, we're getting rid of the wrongfully convicted, hopefully. But are we? Because to the example that I think one of you gave earlier, there were some police that planted evidence and did other things that would have possibly put it. I
specifically said, forget about forensics and forget about all the evidence stuff. Like I'm trying to boil it down to make you understand. Like, I'm not talking about the standard that we have, which is beyond a reasonable doubt. I'm talking about everybody is absolutely sure that it's like you can't dispute it. Like,
right. So, but what if a cop had you hold a gun for whatever reason and then planted the evidence, and now you have a gun at the scene that matches the crime with your fingerprints on it, but you didn't
so are you okay? So that is such a rare case.
It is.
What I'm saying? Like, that is so much harder to construct than just planting a baggie of weed.
Hopefully, that's very rare. But the point is, like, I don't think we ever get rid of it. I agree with you. I think that's a much better standard.
Right, nothing's 100%.
I would be more comfortable with that.
Yeah.
I think when we get to the point where we can read minds, then it'll be.
That's true too. Yeah, and I gotta say, I don't think anybody on this podcast. It's an interesting issue. We were talking about the emotional resonance of this issue. Nobody, I think, in our generations are going to be lobbying for any change on this. People don't get as involved with this issue anymore. Like if I were to lobby for a change on this, I wouldn't know what to say. Like, I don't know. I don't even know if my state has the death penalty.
No, we don't. We don't.
I would have figured. I could have guessed, but I didn't know for sure.
To be fair, it almost was reinstated after Dr. Pettit, before he was state representative Pettit, he fought pretty hard for it. Which, dude, I totally agree. That should have definitely been a death sentence case. The Cheshire home invasion is totally insane. This is like 10 years ago now, 11 years ago. But there was a couple years where he really fought for it to get reinstated. There's no doubt. There's literally no doubt. There was people caught. There was on camera, craziness. But no, they're just serving life in prison.
All right. Well, I mean, that was my final thought. I don't know if you guys have anything else. It's amazing.
No.
It looks like we may actually finish a podcast on time. It's crazy.
All right, guys, let's start talking about universal healthcare right now.
Oh my God. Yeah. Real quick, Tim, anecdotes we're doing. I want to hear about universal healthcare in literally 10 seconds.
I'm for government supported universal healthcare.
All right, I think you're wrong. I think everybody's wrong.
I also think that we need to have the market involved. I think there needs to be options.
You see, I think that's interesting because of this other long topic that we could talk about. I'm just kidding. All right. Thanks everybody for showing up. I had a lot of fun tonight. I continue to have a lot of fun with these. I'm glad for the people who watch this. And again, I'm going to reiterate: we are now finally at the stage where we're putting out some clips. So if you're the person who can't stand the long form talks that we have, we're going to be able to chunk it up and get you some of the tasty tidbits. So be looking for those. I'll be putting those out throughout the week. And then beyond that,
we're just going to be clipping all of my talking points and putting out clips, like videos of just
that's
talking.
all I'm doing, honestly. I'm just like going through looking for when Tim's big.
Yeah, just take all those, put them together. You have all the right information, and all this other noise that's in the background will be gone.
That sounds like a lot of fake news to me, honestly. I think Chris can agree with me on that. All right, so beyond that, remember, like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps us out. We're all rich, so we don't really need you, but it always helps. So, all right, with that, good night, everybody. Thanks for watching. Had a lot of fun.
Good night, guys.
Good night.